Hey, what's up? It's Daniel here. I want to talk about the very first time I had a real psychotic episode. Because I just spoke about having like a psychotic break where like things go kind of crazy for like a few minutes and then they come back and I'm fine. But this is the first time shit really went down. Um, I was 17 years old. I had smoked salvia 10x, and I'd been abusing drugs all like every day for like a year, 2 years, whatever. And so I wasn't completely in my right mind. I was kind of on edge. I was kind of weird. I stayed inside a lot. I was paranoid of going outside, and I had used DXM, like cough syrup, for like a month straight or whatever, when I was 17. And then the following month, um, I smoked salvia 10x and 10 times extract. And I kind of like my soul or my spirit shot out of my body. My body opened up, my spirit shot out. It went through these places, it came back. And then I felt like this weird feeling, almost like having traveled in time or like being in a different place. When I came back, it was just this weird feeling of like a part of me having changed. Like everything felt a little bit different, even though it looked the same. It's hard to describe, but like nothing felt exactly the same as before. Everything was different. And so what happened was I started like hearing people speak to each other whenever I went outside, and it sounded like they would speak about me. Like, um, they would be carrying on conversations, and I would have my own thoughts in my mind, and then suddenly I would hear the other people answer these thoughts when they were talking to each other. Am I going to be late for school or whatever? And I would hear these people be like, "Yeah, yeah, that's true, yeah," and I would think, "Okay, so they just answered my question." Or I would listen to other people, and they would be talking about like this guy, and I would think they were talking about me. And whenever people laughed, it was like this demonic laughter related to my suffering. And okay, so a few months passed by. I was sort of like getting more and more crazy. And it got to this point where um, I was losing touch with reality. And I couldn't feel the love that other people had for me. I had this like blockade. I started to think like I had this weird impression that I was the son of Satan, and slowly I started thinking I was like the son of I was time. I thought I was the passage of time, and everyone hated me because people got bored when they were in time. People, had to stay at work or at school for a few extra hours, whatever. And I thought like people hated me because I was time. And I thought I was like as a kid that I had been the omen and I just didn't know it. I was like this satanic, demonic creature. And let's see what happened. Yeah, so I slowly started to believe that I was like all these different kind of characters, that I was also Jesus. And um, I remember like I thought that I was supposed to be in the afterlife, and if I killed myself, like that would be this. I would end up in the ceremony in the marriage between me and this uh, female satanic being that I was supposed to marry. And so I felt like I was heading towards a singularity, and suddenly like I got really scared because I was on benzos at the time, lorazepam, Ativan, and I was withdrawing from it more and more quickly, and I replaced it with Seroquel, and Seroquel made me more crazy, and withdrawing from lorazepam made me crazy. And so slowly, like, I remember I was praying to God not to go insane. I was so scared. I was really scared. I was like just trying to pray and pray, and my hair was thinning, and I was losing hair, And um, I was reading all these conspiracy theories on these websites. And I was starting to believe in them, thinking that people were like becoming zombies and shit. And so um, one day, I was I was in the kitchen and I noticed that the onions my mom was cooking were like crying as they were being cooked. And I had this sheet in front of me of Shoppers Drug Mart, and it said 20x. And to me, that meant like 20x salvia. And I started to think like, what is this salvia in my food now? And I had this fear of being on salvia because of how intense it had been for me. I had tried it like 20, 30 times, and it was really intense and scary. And so that day I was watching TV, and it looked like the commercials were made for me, and they were just driving me more and more insane. And so I was in the living room, and suddenly I noticed, like, I was on withdrawing from benzos, and I noticed the patterns on the rug. There were like these eyes that were like starting to circle. Like I felt like I was going insane, and I saw these eyes on the rug, and they were like going upwards, and there was like this patch over the faces' mouths, because I was seeing faces, and there was this patch over their mouths, and I remember they were like the blood inside the head was like recirculating, and I had this feeling of like looping over and over and over again, and these eyes going backwards into their heads. And suddenly I looked at like the furniture over there, and I saw like this metal opening that was like opening, and there was this rod like going through it back and forth, and I thought I was having sex with salvia. At one point earlier before that, I started to think I was Lady Salvia, and I realized that I was like losing control of my body, and like these little creatures were moving my body. And so anyway, I started to lose my mind, and I felt like my eyes were like going back into my head, and I thought I was like having sex with this spiritual sex with salvia, and sex was going insane, and the marriage was about killing myself so that I could reach the afterlife. And so I went upstairs to one of the bedrooms. I found two knives. I picked one of them, and I started to like slash my neck, and I had the knife right up to my neck, and just as I was about to do it, like I started to try to cut myself, and suddenly I noticed what I was doing, and I dropped the knife, and I looked in the mirror, and there was this like skull in my pupils looking back at me, this sign of death. And I was like, what the fuck did I just do? Holy crap. Um, so, like, I remember I was in the bathtub, and I was really scared, and there was this mucus coming out of my nose, and my eyes were crossing, so it started forming like V, X, X, V, like X, X, V, X, whatever, and those were in Roman numerals that I started to think I was like gonna spend 500 years in hell. And so when I had slashed my neck, or tried to, I quickly went to my mom and told her, like, call the ambulance, I'm going crazy. So she was scared. She called the ambulance. Uh, I uh, I remember seeing 400 on like this box of Q-tips that had 400 Q-tips in it. Excuse me. And so I started thinking, I'm supposed to take 400 milligrams of Seroquel. So I found 50. I think I found 50, and I asked my mom for 400. She thought that was too much, so she gave me 200 milligrams, and I took them. And so I these paramedics came, and I suddenly felt like I had given my life up to Satan. You know, I weeks earlier I had been listening to the radio, and there were all these weird songs that I thought were like God speaking to me. And so when the paramedics came, I felt like I was in this chess game, and I was trying to win against this entity that was like trying to trap me and put me in hell. And so I was in I was driven to the hospital. My psychotic episode started, and suddenly, like, I saw this man with a necklace on, like whatever those are called, like with a card on it, and I suddenly saw these initials YL, which meant you lose, and I was high at this point. You know, I felt like someone had slipped me PCP or something. That was what was on my mind, that I was on like DXM or PCP, and I felt really high. And as I was in this room, I started to think that everyone was a robot, and my mom was in the room with me. And I remember the moment where I felt like the universe was lifeless and I was the only living being. I was in the room, and I felt like in my mind, I needed to run out of the hospital. I felt like everything was being set up so that I could run out of it. And my mom opened this door to the room I was in, from the room I was in. And I felt like everyone was supposed to freeze. And I would suddenly see that life was this facade, that life was this fake trip, and that I was the only living person on Earth. And as she opened the door, like, everything froze for a second, and then everything continued, and I thought, you know, everyone was controlled by the Borg or something, and slowly I became catatonic. Like, I was really scared, and I started to I stopped moving, and they had to put me in a wheelchair, and they wheeled me through a hallway, and the hallway was like extending and becoming longer, and I couldn't handle the length of the hallway, so I closed my eyes, and then I saw this like infinity room, and I felt like I was being pushed through this infinity room, and it was just looping over and over and over again, and I felt like I was being pushed forever. I was like, what the fuck's going on? And I was scared to open my eyes. So I'm going to continue in the next video.